107.5 The Game.
One. Oh, touch my V-neck sweater. 1 and 2 and a 1, 2, 3.
And welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you on this Monday. A lot of things happening in the world of Gamecock athletics. Got a little bit of football news to start off the day, though. Chris wrote about this on Gamecock Central a little bit earlier this morning. Seems that Freddie Kitchens is set to depart the South Carolina program, head up north to join the Tar Heel staff with Mac Brown.
Yeah, Mac Brown lost his tight ends coach, veteran John Lilly, who I believe has been at FSU, Georgia, North Carolina. He was on Mark Richt's staff at Georgia for a long time. Moving on to Frank Reich's staff with the Carolina Panthers recently, and so that left a gap on the coaching staff. This one, admittedly, not something we were really tracking, Wes. Maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. Hadn't really gotten any wind of this. On Three's Matt Zenitz reported it earlier today. Certainly appears every indication to be true. Matt does a really, really good job over there for On Three, tracking all the movement in the coaching industry. Shane Beamer's lost a few off-field staffers who've been pretty important this offseason. Stanton Weber, who did a great job under Pete Limbo's special teams analyst, moving on to Toledo into a full-time position. Nick Coleman, who was an offensive analyst, split the play calling duties with Freddie Kitchens during the Gator Bowl. He's at UAB as the quarterback's coach. Kristen Coggan, who headed up the nutrition, heading to Nebraska. So few on-field guys had interest shown in them this offseason as well, and South Carolina was able to hold on to those. So this happens, when you hire people who have who do a good job or have really good resumes or both. You're typically going to lose some. It is an interesting move, though, because Kitchens, he started his coaching career in the college game. 1999, I think, was his first job. But he had some carryover with Shane Beamer on the Mississippi State staff under Sylvester Croom back in 2005. And that was, I think, his last college job. He jumped into the NFL from 2006 to like 2021.
Yeah, he was with the Giants.
With the Giants, here, yeah, right? And of course had a head coaching stint with the Cleveland Browns after serving as their OC. So it looked like every indication was he was content with just being an off-field guy at South Carolina, being an analyst. But this opportunity popped up, and looks like he wants to take it.
Kind of interesting that he is at North Carolina, which happens to be your first opponent next year if you're South Carolina. So that to me, there's always going to be some layers to South Carolina, North Carolina. This is a very interesting additional layer to this. And, I think, first of all, Matt Zenitz, I don't know how this guy does it, but he does as good a job as anybody out there of keeping track with the movement within the coaching community as far as breaking some of these things. And he did it again here. So shout out to him. But I think it's interesting just in the game planning of, now you do have a new offensive coordinator at South Carolina, obviously. So there's not this specific complete carryover that there would have been if Satterfield, was still at South Carolina and Kitchens had been at South Carolina for a year under him. It was kind of interesting to me how things with Kitchens sort of, I guess, changed in that when he was first hired. My impression was that it may be, a short stint, that with his resume, if he didn't want to, if he wanted to get back into being an on-the-field coach, whether that was at college or the NFL, he had the resume and the connections, the networking to make it happen. And then you did hear, granted, these were sort of, I would say, just rumblings, but, I heard some chatter like, hey, he likes here, he's happy here. I think his daughter is a student athlete at South Carolina. And so it was, he may be content staying in that role. But I would imagine, if you're a coach, you're content until you have another opportunity, and this pops up. It's an on the field coach. It's certainly going to pay more, and I think it was an opportunity, obviously, to get a little bit more control and to be an actual position coach, and maybe was just too good of a chance to turn down because he doesn't really have to completely uproot things again. You're talking about one state up and going to work for a really solid coach in Mac Brown.
Well, and again, a guy that was a former NFL head coach and certainly high profile offensive coordinator as well. You knew he wasn't going to stay in the analyst role for long. We've seen this time and time again out at Alabama. It's kind of a step to get you back on track to where you want to go, which would maybe eventually be becoming a head coach again. We've never seen him as a head coach in college, but this is a point I brought up to Colin in the last hour. Mac Brown got the extension through what? I think January of 27 a couple of weeks ago, January of 28. His time at North Carolina is going to come to an end sooner rather than later. He's in his 70s. He's not going to be coaching them for another 10 to 15 years. So if you're a guy like Freddie Kitchens going to take a tight end's role up there, it's like, okay, there's a realistic shot. Maybe he could be the North Carolina head coach in 4 to 5 seasons. Maybe he views that as an opportunity as well. But again, you're not going to hold him as a analyst forever, given the jobs that he's had before, talking about the resume. But again, he was able to do well for you when you needed him, especially in the bowl game with him and Nick Coleman coming up with the game plan there. And, we'll see what he does in North Carolina.
Yeah, and I think to go back to the other point, what do y'all think this means for game planning for next year from North Carolina? I mean, North Carolina, obviously, they're pretty familiar with South Carolina's talent. They played them in a bowl game, obviously not this past season, but the season before. So there's some carryover there. And, in some ways, you're talking about, if you're talking about 2 full seasons separation in college football, there is just a huge difference in what the rosters are going to look like there. But I think Mac Brown and Shane Beamer obviously are friends. There's some carryover there in terms of them being familiar with each other, dating back to, the Frank Beamer days. And, I think both sides probably have paid attention to each's programs. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is it a small storyline? Is it a meaningless factor completely? Is it a big factor, or is it, this might have a small impact here or there, but isn't really a factor at all as far as him having a familiarity with South Carolina and the roster and what they would want to do?
Maybe Freddie can give them some insight this time into the fact that they could possibly slot Dakereon Joyner at quarterback. They seem to have absolutely no idea that was a possibility last time. I mean, there are some changes. You got to keep in mind the timing here. February 27th, spring ball doesn't open for another over a couple weeks, mid-March, really. And so the timing of this hire makes it so that, Freddie Kitchens hasn't gone through, say, an entire spring with Dowell Loggins, as the offensive coordinator. He's obviously going to have more familiarity than your average person with the personnel at South Carolina. Resources are so great in college football now that, you see these coaches, they have these, I don't even know how many inches these binders are. If you've ever been in a college football coach's office, they have binders for their game plans, and they have all these detailed scouting reports on basically every kid on the roster, except North Carolina didn't have one for Dakereon in 2021. And, so they devote a lot of time and resources, and there's so much more data than you would have, 10, 15 years ago, even. But someone who works on a college football staff and literally is around the kids on basically a daily basis, they're going to know a few more things.
Well, I think about it like this, again, with Dowell Loggins being the offensive coordinator, and we still haven't seen what that offense is going to be yet. If anything, wouldn't Freddie Kitchens be able to give North Carolina more info on what the defense does, given the fact that he was there seeing it in practice every day and kind of knows what their nuances are, as opposed to this offense that he doesn't really know what they're going to do?
I would think to an extent, and I would think, he probably knows more along the lines of, hey, this guy left, this guy graduated, this guy transferred, but based on what I saw, this sophomore who hasn't really played is probably in line, to step in and play some role. This guy who didn't really do a whole lot last year showed promise, and here are his tendencies. I think there is some value to having, an understanding of the roster and understanding what the different skill sets are from some guys that maybe there's not a lot of tape out there on, maybe even as much as Pete Limbo tends to get one over on opponents on special teams, maybe there's hey, watch out for this. Pete Limbo likes this in this situation. I think it's just a little bit more of an understanding of your opponent. And, but that's part of it. You see guys move around and ball all the time. Certainly with the separation here, again, it's February 27th. Maybe it's not a huge, big thing, but I think certainly, just like I said, it's another layer to a game that I think will have many layers. And, you're talking about a border battle. You're talking about it being in Charlotte. And as we've talked about already, you're talking about two of the best quarterbacks in the country squaring off in this game as well.
You guys had some recent conversations with the head coach Beamer. We'll get your breakdown and his thoughts. We'll come back on the other side. As we head into this break, though, South Carolina baseball in action again tomorrow as they take on North Carolina A&T. Have pair tickets for caller number 5. Be the 5th caller, 803-404-6100. Win yourself pair of tickets for Founders Park tomorrow. Gamecocks versus NC A&T. We'll be right back on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs.
Got something to say? Ring us up on the Love Chevy phone line. South Carolina's #1 volume Chevy dealer. At 803-404-6100. Your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
This is Sean Morash with a CBS Sports Minute. I consider myself a traditionalist. If you serve anything other than turkey on Thanksgiving, you need to take a lap. That being said, Major League Baseball having a clock is a major win. The game needed to evolve, and it did this weekend. Meaningless games in Florida and Arizona, they were more enjoyable than the last 5 years plus of regular season baseball. Oh my goodness, the MLB got something right. I'm Sean Morash. CBS Sports
Radio. Lowe's always has more ways for you to save. On top of our everyday low prices, pros can save big when buying in bulk. Or if your purchase is over $1,500, ask about our volume savings program. A pro associate can provide a customized quote. Ask about our volume savings programs today. It always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. While supplies last, minimum purchase required. Selection varies by location. Lowe's reserves the right to limit quantities. Volume discount pricing quotes are valid up to 7 days. Visit your local pro desk to learn more and start saving. Offers subject to change, may not be available in all Lowe's stores.
Wendy's home-style French toast sticks are so delicious, some are saying that they're better than their mom's breakfast.
Excuse me, did you just say Wendy's French toast sticks are better than my breakfast?
Mom, is that you?
Answer the question.
I said some people are saying that because they're so crispy on the outside and fluffy on the inside and perfect in every way.
Uh-huh. And what do you think?
I think it's time to tell people to choose wisely. Choose Wendy's sweet and crispy home-style French toast sticks.
That's still not an answer.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
An ode to the mountains, oceans, rivers, and adventurers of the Southeast, Peak Drift Brewing Company has launched its award-winning craft beers and hard seltzers to bars, stores, and restaurants across the Midlands. Try our Golden Ale, New England IPA, Red IPA, Berry Crumble Sour, or Fire Pit Ale, all crafted using cutting-edge technology that promotes sustainability and industry collaboration. Find your Peak Drift moment at peakdriftbrewing.com.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. This ad is paid for by the settlement specialists. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see if you're entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup, call now. Our team is here to fight for everyday people and to get you the compensation you may deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-778-9713 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry. Time is limited. Call 800-778-9713. 800-778-9713.
Finding great people to hire is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's pretty difficult, right? Well, ZipRecruiter has mastered finding a needle in a haystack, so they take it to the next level. They make hiring so simple that it's like finding a needle in a needle stack. And that's why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. Here's what it's like to use ZipRecruiter. They have so many qualified candidates that it's easier to find the right ones for your roles. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's a lot of needles. So how do they do it? ZipRecruiter's powerful technology sends you candidates who are a great match for your job, and you can even invite your top choices to apply. So if you want less hay and more needles, head to ZipRecruiter.
And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/RADIO. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Sure, you could wait until spring for spring cleaning, or you could get an insanely clean home now by calling the experts at Zero Res Carpet and Air Duct Cleaning today. They use ZR water to clean your carpets like no other. And with no sticky, soapy residue, your carpets stay cleaner longer. Right now, mention me, Bill Gunner, at 107.5 The Game, and you'll get 3 rooms of carpet clean for $119 plus a free hallway. Schedule online at ZeroResColumbia.com.
Broadcasting live from the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. This is 107.5 The Game.
Discover Herndon Certified, Herndon Chevrolet's premier used car warranty. Shop with complete confidence knowing Herndon Chevrolet has got you covered.
Stop by or shop online today and see why Herndon Chevrolet makes you smile. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour
With Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head.
on your home of the Gamecocks.
107.5 The Game.
Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you on your Monday. I should ask you guys this when we open the show, but it sounds like you had a lot of fun out at the Main Street Firehouse Subs on Friday.
We had a blast. Had some folks come by. Saw some of Penn's baseball team getting ready for their sweep at the hands of the Gamecocks.
Well, if they had come in and had a sub, maybe they would have won one of the games.
So they just walked by. I thought they actually came inside.
Walked right on by, and that was their main problem. But we did not have that problem. We were out there for 3 hours.
Winners eat Firehouse.
They do, absolutely. Larry Chandler, the wonderful owner, gave us, Wes, what may have been the best tray yet we've had, or the best sampler platter. It included, actually, interestingly enough, today's sub of the day, which is the meatball. It is Meatball Monday at Firehouse Subs, 14 different locations throughout the Midlands. If you're close to the studio, closest one to you, right down the road there on campus at Main Street. That's where we were on Friday from 9 to noon. You can find one near you. If you just drive around, you'll probably see one, or you can go online, firehousesubs.com. Find the closest location next to you. You can also use the Rapid Rescue to order your Firehouse sub of the day. That's $5.99 for a small, $7.99 for a medium. Or you can download the Firehouse Subs app and join the rewards program so that you can work on getting yourself some free Firehouse Subs. But for today, Meatball Monday, $7.99 for a medium. Go check it out at your local Firehouse Subs location.
And Chris, you just mentioned a few minutes ago, we are a few weeks away from spring ball getting started. Of course, spring game coming up on April the 15th. Spring is a time for position battles, also a time for these younger guys to step up. Somebody that maybe didn't have a big role this past season, looking for an opportunity to fill those gaps left behind by guys departing for the draft, departing for graduation, departing for the transfer portal. And, Shane Beamer definitely views the spring as an opportunity to learn what a lot of these guys can do and see how some of these guys can contribute by the time the fall rolls around.
Yeah, I think sometimes you got a couple different buckets at least. First, when you're looking at the spring or preseason, even if you have some new additions to your roster and you have a position that maybe doesn't necessarily have to be deficient, but maybe you don't have a starter that was super entrenched, your production could be better. You can always see a guy from the roster overtake that spot, or maybe you get a newcomer, whether it's a freshman or a transfer portal guy that can step in and take that role. But you also have where you have key defections from the roster. And so South Carolina is probably going to have some of both of those buckets for 2023, but they definitely have some of those holes on the defensive side of the ball is I think where we could start. West, they lose 2 starting corners, Cam Smith and Darius Rush. You also lose 2 starting linebackers in Sherrod Green and Brad Johnson, who were 6-year guys for this program. So you're losing some playmaking, some talent, and certainly a lot of experience.
Yeah, I think, Chris, the positions you naturally look at least for me, one on the defensive side, one on the offensive side would be edge and running back. And, I think they've got to go get a portal guy really at both of those spots. And I think ideally, like you're hoping you can actually find a true difference maker. Now that's going to be determined by a host of other factors. Who is available? Is there, we've seen how this portal stuff plays out. Is there a prior sort of connection, a prior relationship? Is there a reason for a guy to look at you? And, in some cases, honestly, man, it's like there's luck involved. Like, did you happen to be able to just get in touch with the kid first? Devontae Reed, I remember, there was no prior connections whatsoever between South Carolina and Devontae Reed. And it was just quite literally that South Carolina kind of saw him in there first and was like, oh, this guy's pretty good. Let's reach out, and, hits him up and starts getting something scheduled before everybody else could. And so I think, again, ideally, though, you want a guy who can make a difference at either one of those positions. I think certainly at edge, you probably, even if you can't get a difference maker, just even a depth guy, you probably have to take one, even if you can't find that just elite guy. Now, you kind of look at it, maybe some other spots, you probably say, hey, this is a spot where if there was an elite guy that would just pop up, you'd take him. But you're not necessarily feeling like you have to add another sort of body to the roster, for lack of a better way to say it. And I thought it was very interesting based on some of our conversations. South Carolina actually could potentially take a DB out of the portal if the right guy came along. Now, I think based on what we've both been told, I think they actually feel pretty good about their overall numbers in the defensive backfield. There's kind of depth, but if the right kid came along, I would take that. Chris, kind of a lockdown corner type, or maybe even if it's an elite safety. Not that safety is like a massive need. Going into last year, safety was a massive need, but if an elite guy came along, that actually would open you up to the Eamon Worry conversation that people are tired of me talking about, or to DQ Smith, kind of just be like, all right, he's a nickel. He's going to play nickel, period. Yeah. And then even if Eamon Worry was at safety, this other mythical safety that I have made up would be the other starter. But ideally, I think if a lockdown corner came along and it just made sense that you would go try to bring him in, because we got to remember Darius Rush, Cam Smith played very good ball for this defense last year. And a point I think you brought up, Chris, that allowed Clayton White to feel very comfortable being more and more aggressive as the season went along. And the deeper in the year it went, the more, I don't know if the analytics backed this up, the more it felt like South Carolina was willing to blitz, bring extra guys, lots of cover one, some sort of cover zero, nobody's deep on the back end type stuff. And I think that if you want to be able to do that again, you have to feel good about those cornerbacks.
Well, and you look at, there's already a little bit of evidence in addition. I don't think we need more evidence than our conversation with Shane Beamer, and he's sitting there talking about portal targets and mentions that there's a possibility that they could take another portal DB. But you look back several weeks, or heck, it's hard to keep up, Wes, with the current timeline, how fast things are progressing. But they offered Trevez Johnson from Florida, who ended up committing to Missouri. So he'll play for them next year, transfer from Florida, Trevez Johnson. And he was a guy that played some safety and nickel, at Florida. And so now, could he play? We know Torian Gray likes to cross-train his guys, but the background there is safety nickel. So I think it is fascinating, where if it's kind of maybe best available guy, I'm with you that the bigger need may be corner. So let's talk about some of the guys they got on the roster now that are going. We know they don't have Rush or Smith. So the appearance would certainly be, the expectation would be that your two corners are going to be Marcellus Dial and OD Fortune. OD played a good bit during the season. Sometimes when a guy would go down for a little bit, sometimes he'd just be in there. He played a lot during the bowl game.
Played a ton against Clemson.
Played a lot against Clemson. Marcellus Dial obviously finished the year very strong. So you feel pretty good about those guys. I don't think you feel Cam Smith, Darius Rush good, but you feel good about them. Keenan Nelson Jr. has come along at nickel. You've got Eamon Moore. You've got DQ. DQ could start at nickel or safety or both, depending week to week. He seems to be capable of handling that. You've got some youngsters on the roster that could play several different positions. The guy that I think everybody, including myself, forgets about is David Spalding. You know, Spalding has started his career as a nickel, but then you remember the Kentucky game. He's playing, they move him to safety, makes a huge play on the first play of the game, ends up getting hurt, missing the rest of the season. But he's another important guy to this team because he also has positional versatility. He's very smart. He can play nickel. He can play safety. I feel like last year we're coming in going, this team probably has more corner types than safeties. This year, you might even feel better about safety. Is that fair? I mean, you got probably 3 or 4 guys that you feel pretty good about there.
Yeah, I think you do. And that, I mean, if you look at it from the prism of where we are right now, if we were trying to like project out, I don't think you or I would be saying, oh yeah, I bet a year from now we'll be saying Carolina feels really good at safety, because you wouldn't have, I think you and I were both very high on Eamon Worry, but it wouldn't have been fair to put on him the expectations to do what he ended up actually doing, And then DQ Smith, I mean, he was a late addition to this class and primarily was a quarterback in high school. So, I mean, let's be honest, those two guys have stepped up and put you in a position to where you can say that sentence. Then you add in Spalding. You, of course, add in a guy that I think, we're all going to have eyes on in Jalen Kilgore during the spring. Peyton Williams is someone we're not really talking about, but he stepped in and hung in there at the Tennessee game when Eamon Worry was out because of the targeting call. So, I mean, yeah, I think you feel pretty good about safety. I look at corner, and you do have a spot there, Chris, where the good programs sort of, this is how they do. You lose 2 guys, and in theory, your hope is that you've kind of been training the next 2 guys, and they just sort of naturally step in. And in the case, certainly, of Marcellus Dial, we saw him sort of be South Carolina's third corner, basically. At times when DQ Smith was playing nickel, that meant Marcellus wasn't a starter. When Cam Smith slid in and became the nickel, Marcellus was a starter. But point being, pretty much any way you sort of shape it up, he was the third corner, and it's kind of like you're getting him ready. He's going to slide into the top spot next year. Well, your fourth corner last year was OD Fortune. This is a more traditional way, I feel like, of building a roster where you're getting that guy ready to move in. It's not, oh, I got to go out, I got to get a transfer portal guy, which is the more new way to do it, or the way you don't want to have to do it. Oh, I need this freshman to come in and play. Like, this is the traditional way you do it. Now, the matter is, hey, are these guys as good? Can they be as good as Cam and Darius? That is still a real question, I think. And so if you're South Carolina, you want to simultaneously show confidence in these guys. You want to empower them. You want to tell Marcellus Dial and OD Fortune, hey, guys, you're next in line because you've waited your turn, you've earned it, and you've worked hard to get here. But everybody needs a backup plan. And you need to have it in mind what it would look like if it just doesn't work out. If one of I think Marcellus Dial, you feel pretty good the way he finished the year. about him stepping in. And I think you feel better about OD Fortune than you certainly did at the beginning of last year. But you need to have a plan, and you got to build depth as well.
All right, we'll run into this time. I'll come back on the other side. Have Wes and Chris give a little refresher on the transfer portal because it does work a little bit differently in the springtime as opposed to the window that just closed over the winter. As we head in this break, though, got another pair of tickets for tomorrow's baseball game against North Carolina A&T. Caller number 5 at 803-404-6100. Win yourself a pair of tickets. We'll be right back on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
We are very social.
At 107.5 The Game on Twitter, 107.5 The Game on Instagram, and 107.5 The Game on Facebook.
Oh, Teddy, did you get my friend request? Oh, I'll have to check.
Your home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
When I can't sleep, my mind just races. I think about work, the kids, but I don't think about taking melatonin because I'm afraid I'll feel groggy in the morning.
ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies has an optimal dose of melatonin for no next-day grogginess, so you can fall asleep naturally and wake up feeling refreshed. ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies for better sleep like never before. And try Pure Z Sleep plus next-day energy with melatonin plus extended-release B vitamins.
Hey, y'all, this is your girl, Cheryl Underwood, and I want to tell you something. My digestive system used to make me feel sluggish, but those days are over. Now I feel great. That's because I increased my fiber intake with the Metamucil 2-week challenge, and I'm still hooked. I just took Metamucil every day for 14 days, and it's really that easy. Metamucil traps and removes the waste that weighs you down, so you feel lighter and more energetic. Now I never want to go back to that heavy feeling. Are you ready for the Metamucil 2-week challenge for a coupon and daily support? Sign up at Metamucil.com today.
Doco Ribfest is coming to Doco Meadows Park March 10th and 11th in Blythewood. Music, food, fun, and 10,000 pounds of ribs and cook-off competition. Friday evening movie night and music by Too Much Sylvia. Saturday's music is Joseph's Grayson Band, Common Time Bluegrass Band, Blues Deluxe, Wrong Side of the Tracks, and Tokyo Joe. Free admission and park and shuttle service. For tickets and more info, visit DocoRibFest.com. Presented by the town of Blythewood, Chamber of Commerce, Room Heating and Air, and Doco Smoke.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Haley, quote, "Navage is the best thing I bought. I love it. My nose feels so clear now and I can breathe. I've been struggling with a stuffy nose for weeks. I bought Navage and it's amazing." Or this one, "I use Navage every night, could not imagine life without it. I have 5 cats, and before I found Navage, I was a clogged mess. Now I breathe so much better," unquote. Those are 2 of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
My friends at the South Carolina Forestry Commission want your help in canceling wildfires this year.
Or at least the ones caused by humans, which are about 90% of all wildfires.
Negligent but avoidable behaviors like careless outdoor debris burning,
lax campfire safety, and improper vehicle and equipment use
are the leading causes of wildfires in South Carolina.
Please think before you burn outdoors or operate spark-producing equipment. Let's cancel wildfires, South Carolina.
Sponsored by the South Carolina Forestry Commission, the South Carolina Broadcasters Association, and this station.
It's time to contact AAA Heating and Air and tell them Bill Gunner sent you. That's right. 803-677-1500. If you're in need of repairs or maintenance to your heating and air system, contact AAA Heating and Air today. Again, 803-677-1500. You know you are putting comfort in your own hands with qualified technicians from AAA Heating and Air. So don't wait any longer. Contact them today. 803-677-1500. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
Uneven sidewalks, pool decks, or patios? Canty can repair them for just a fraction of the cost of replacement. Call Canty Foundation Specialists today for your free estimate.
Canty can fix it.
Uneven concrete can be a dangerous tripping hazard leading to injury. Call the experts at Canty to permanently repair your sinking or cracked concrete. Call 753-1495 or visit CantyCanFixIt.com. Canty can fix it.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour.
Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks.
107.5 The Game.
By the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you, continuing our conversation relating to spring ball and shoring up this roster, figuring out what you have as you approach the upcoming fall season. And I mentioned this before the break. There's another window for the transfer portal after spring practice beginning on May the 15th. This one a little bit different than the one in the wintertime that just closed in mid-January. If you guys could just let people know, give people a refresher on how things work a little bit differently in the springtime.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, here's the deal. If people are in the transfer portal, they can still join a roster, right?
They don't trap you in there.
You're not stuck in the portal. But you also have to consider that there are you got the transfer portal window. You also have windows of time where you can actually join a college program. So classes start, you got semesters, some places have quarter systems or whatever it may be. So that's another consideration. You don't just show up at a football team and say, "Hey, I'm ready to play." There are plenty of logistics on both sides, on all sides for it. But you can't enter the portal generally outside of one of these windows unless you're a grad transfer. So May 1st through the 15th will represent another 2-week roughly window where guys can jump back in. And presumably that is so that guys who are not in the portal can go through spring practice with their program and kind of reassess the situation. Maybe they're not getting as much playing time as they'd wanted, or any other number of things may happen, and then they can jump back in. On the other side, you've got college coaches who will have had on their side also a full spring to assess the situation. At South Carolina, nothing is going to change unless something goes, completely unforeseen. Nothing's going to change their fact that they're going to have to, as Wes said, jump in and get a running back and edge player.
Sure.
And I think that's even if they're very happy with the guys that they already have on the roster this spring. You look at edge, for instance, for South Carolina, another kind of one of those forgotten guys who's going to be important is Terrell Dawkins. Even if he is healthy and has a wonderful spring, you're still going to look at it and say, okay, got Jordan Strong back, got Terrell Dawkins, got Brian Thomas Jr., Tyreek Johnson has some experience. They're still going to feel like they need to go in and jump in and get another guy.
Yeah, I think the Dawkins is definitely a forgotten guy. And, the interesting thing, it was kind of, I don't want to say strange, but the way it played out last year, Dawkins came in and, we had written, hey, this is a guy they really like, someone that's going to be competing for playing time. I think we had slotted him, I don't know, Chris, maybe being like the third end. And then Gilbert Edmond comes on strong going into fall, like going into the season. And it sort of felt like Dawkins had a little bit of an up and down spring, but he finished the spring on a high note. And I remember watching him in the spring game, and he had a great game, I thought. And then, I think there was some question, maybe, all right, he's trying to find his best playing weight for the SEC level that also lets him maintain his quickness and his speed. And, he was in the conversation, but it didn't really feel like he was able to push, obviously, past, a Gilbert Edmond, for example. And then he had the injury, and the injury kept him out for a while. And then you sort of always wonder, all right, how much, even though he's back from injury, how much is that affecting his ability to push into the rotation? And it just didn't happen, even though Carolina was in a spot where, they were losing guys, obviously, with no Jordan Strong out there. So I think this is a guy you kind of circle. If you want to, not that everybody, you can put them in categories or buckets or anything like that, but if you were trying to put guys in broad categories, I think he's a guy that you kind of circle and say, all right, this is a huge spring for him. And not just a huge spring for South Carolina at that position, but for Terrell Dawkins to say, look, I have an opportunity here. I've got a chance to sort of maybe ease some concern by the staff at that spot. and prove I'm capable of going out there and at the very least playing a bunch of meaningful snaps. The top end of that is he goes out there and said, hey, I'm here. I want to be a starter, and he proves he's capable of that. The bottom end of that is, it's kind of like, well, we still don't feel good about it. So I think there's some wide ranges there. Beamer has mentioned him, mentioned Tyreek Johnson, who's been on campus for a long time and played as a reserve last year. Is there more upside to go there? Can he step up a little bit? Then you have Brian Thomas Jr., who played some last year as a true freshman, was a little bit more situational. I'll be honest, I think his size sort of limits his long-term upside as far as being someone they count on as a true starter. But certainly if he could take a step forward, that is very helpful there as well. But ultimately, you kind of, for me, Chris, Dawkins, and partially, Shane Beamer mentioned him to us, front and center as being a guy they're going to have their eyes on. And then what about Dez? Dez Umeozulu comes in, true freshman, incredibly high upside. How quickly can Sterling Lucas bring him along and put him in a place to potentially impact that position?
Yeah, right now, there's not a lot of depth. There's not even a lot of proven production beyond Jordan Strong, who by the way, is still coming off a knee injury. And I think it's Wes, at least his second in his career. And so you hope that everything's normal, totally fine. We've seen guys do it before, whether it's one ACL, two ACLs. We've even seen Thomas Davis for the Panthers had like 7. I think he had 3. So you've seen it before, but there are a lot of questions there, and some of it is really counting on some guys to make that leap. Now, it could happen. Like last year, think back to last season. You started the season with Jordan Strong, Jordan Birch, and then you kind of we'd heard Gilbert Edmond had made a lot of strides in the offseason. Well, you needed both of the Jordans to take a step forward. You needed somebody else like a Gilbert Edmond to step forward. Jordan Strong gets hurt. Birch does take a step forward overall, and Gilbert Edmond certainly takes a step forward overall. So those things can happen, but you do have to kind of bank on that right now. And I mean, go back to another story from the portal. South Carolina wasn't able to get Trajan Jeffcoat out of the portal. That obviously hurt, and that would have been a huge, huge factor for them this season. So you're kind of back to the drawing board there. There are some options on the roster. I think everyone would feel comfortable if you had another guy or two even that you could bring in. Beyond that, you're going to be counting on Jordan Strong being fully healthy and staying healthy, everybody on the roster staying healthy. Dawkins taking that step forward, some other guys taking that step forward, and then even getting creative. Donovan Westmoreland, for instance, someone you could see as a pass rusher at edge. He's not going to play there full time. He's a linebacker. But he's got experience doing that at the high school level, and you could see that some this season.
Yeah, this will be a conversation we can continue to have as spring goes along. Again, that transfer portal opening up again on May the 15th. Definitely going to need some more depth at the edge and running back positions. We'll come back on the other side. For that, can you guys guess what I have at the break here for caller number 5?
I'm going to guess you got some tickets.
I have more tickets for baseball. So yes, be caller number 5, 803-404-6100. Another pair of tickets as Gamecocks baseball takes on North Carolina A&T at Founders Park tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs right after this.
On demand podcast menu.
Sponsored by Lexington Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
If you're dealing with injuries or pain, our team is here to get you better sooner.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
If it's round, rubber, and roll, Rose got it. If it's round, rubber, and roll, Rose got it.
Hey folks, Cameron Bo Williamson here with Bow Tire and Oil, now open next to the Publix at Hendricks Crossing in Lexington. We are family owned and operated, serving the Midlands for over 30 years. Come check us out or give us a call at 803-520-4444.
If it's round, rubber, and roll, Bow Tire's got it.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson. This ad is paid for by the settlement specialists. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is one of the most common cancers in the United States. If you or a loved one was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, you could be entitled to cash compensation. Bayer, the owner of Roundup, will pay more than $10 billion to cancer victims of weed killer Roundup. Call our weed killer cancer hotline now to see if you're entitled to cash compensation. Roundup has been one of the most commonly used herbicides in the U.S. If you or someone you love has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were exposed to Roundup, call now. Our team is here to fight for everyday people and to get you the compensation you may deserve. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and were regularly exposed to Roundup weed killer, even if the loved one has passed away, call 800-778-9713 now to see if you are entitled to compensation. But hurry. Time is limited. Call 800-778-9713. 800-778-9713.
Uneven sidewalks, pool decks, or patios? Canty can repair them for just a fraction of the cost of replacement. Call Canty Foundation Specialists today for your free estimate.
Canty can fix it.
Uneven concrete can be a dangerous tripping hazard leading to injury. Call the experts at Canty to permanently repair your sinking or cracked concrete. Call 753-1495 or visit CantyCanFixIt.com. Canty can fix it.
Broadcasting live from the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. This is 1075 The Game.
A great selection of new Chevys is available now at Herndon Chevrolet. The lot is packed with inventory and more is on the way. So shop your hometown Chevy dealer today.
Stop by or shop online today and see why Herndon Chevrolet makes you smile. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour
With Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head.
on your home of the Gamecocks.
1075 The Game.
Here's Warren. Jumper for the baseline, no good. Rebound LA, and the Gamecocks can dribble out the clock. The South Carolina Gamecocks are SEC champions. There will be no sharing. They've run the table here in the regular season. Run their record to 29-0, 16-0 in the SEC, knocking off Georgia 73-63 on Senior Day.
You heard it yesterday in WISW. That was Brad Mueller calling the Gamecocks women's team, picking up the victory against Georgia 73-63, wrapping up a perfect regular season, perfect in conference play, claiming sole ownership of the regular season SEC title. And now they set their sights to the SEC tournament. Well, they'll be in action on Friday, taking on either Arkansas or Missouri, as this team continues to pursue perfection and another national championship.
Man, how special. I mean, I can't say anything that hasn't already been said, but we'll just reiterate it and say it again. That senior class, I mean, for every reason you could think of, from winning a national title to setting a new standard to staying together to setting, I would say, guys, not just a standard for winning, but a standard for putting the team and program above yourself. I mean, it's incredible. The numbers are incredible, but I think even more impressive than the numbers is just the way they have carried themselves and represented not just themselves and their families, but the university as well. And I mean, you're talking about people and players who, Chris, could have, I mean, Zaya Cook could be, if she went somewhere else where she just wanted to be the star of the show. I mean, she's showing it this year. She's actually their leading scorer. And Dawn Staley made a compelling case for her for All-American. But, you know, she could have been 20 points a game, 22 points. I mean, I don't know if there's a limit on what she could have been as far as just racking up personal accolades. But like the rest of this class has chosen that they wanted to be more than that. And I think that sets the standard for the players who are next. That, hey, if you want to come here, you can win titles, but you have to be willing at times to sit and wait and to maybe give a little bit in order to earn that. It actually is very much, I know it seems like we compare everything to football, but doesn't it remind you of Saban and Alabama and the number of guys who are highly recruited 4- and 5-star guys, but wait their turn to go be in the spotlight?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing about what Dawn Staley's done, I think it's kind of made us numb a little bit to, it's just kind of another day, another win. This is not easy. It's not easy to go undefeated, and that should go without saying, but they've just been so dominant. And even when they haven't been dominant, the ability to not bring your A game and still be able to win, whether it's, kind of getting outplayed by Tennessee for a few quarters, frankly, but then still finding a way to go on a run and win later in the game. Even against Georgia, you win by 10, probably don't play your A game in that contest, but what you've got on the line is a perfect SEC record and a perfect home record and a perfect overall record this season. Those things are very hard to achieve. And for them to do it, I think we shouldn't lose sight of just how hard it is. Some stats here from Chris Wellbaum, who, by the way, has been covering Dawn from the beginning and does a fantastic job for us at Gamecock Central. 9 previous teams have done this, and they all, not to jinx it, they've all capped their season with a national championship. The last one to do it was UConn in 2016. On the men's side, there's 12 undefeated teams, according to Wellbaum, but none since 1976. And when I mean undefeated, that means all the way through.
Right.
All the way through. So they haven't accomplished that yet, but they have, potentially 3 games in the SEC tournament and 6 in the NCAA tournament in order to be able to do that.
And Don Staley's talked about this a lot. When you win the national championship, it's hard to say you have a chip on your shoulder going into the next season, but they've used the 2 losses they had last year to Missouri and Kentucky in the SEC championship game as the motivating factor. Like, hey, we didn't accomplish everything we wanted to. We didn't go undefeated last season, and that's been the driving force for their success this year. And, when you look at in men's and women's basketball, a lot of times these number 1 seeds, when you look at their conference tournaments, like, yeah, they want to win, but if they got bounced in the first or second game, it's not the end of the world. They'd still be a number 1 seed. We'll give them some extra rest, whatever, so on and so forth. Not for this team. They want to be perfect. They want to win the SEC conference championship. They want to obviously take that momentum into March Madness here in a couple weeks. Like, nothing short of perfection is really going to be good enough for these guys or for these girls.
And back to Wes's point, the culture that Dawn has built is really something to be, I think, treasured by Gamecock fans, and probably, others are going to try to mimic it, but it's hard to do because of how she's built it and how, I think, unique and kind of special it is. This isn't a program that's been here for 20 years. She kind of built it. They've had some pockets, right, of success in the past. You look around and there's some players that used to be on Dawn's roster that are playing well for other programs, Sinai Rivers, NC State, LaDeja Williams for LSU. There are others, but the ones who did stick around, number 1, who bought in early, this senior class has been talked about so much, as you brought up, Tyler, them taking that leap and jumping in and then sticking with it throughout has really paid off. And then for the ones who have had to wait their turn, who have maybe played more of not an insignificant role, but not a starting role or not, 30 minutes a game, those girls are still playing a key role in this team. And, something that Dawn talked about after the last national championship, she was very quick to credit not only her starters, but the players that, came off the bench and waited their turn.
Well, I think they've done a great job of trying to get, when there are opportunities, trying to get them in the game and finding a role for as many girls as possible. But, I just, I go back to, we'll finish it off with the senior class and the fact that I think, I'm trying to think of the words Dawn Staley used. She basically said they're very low maintenance. Sometimes you bring in people who are highly rated, and this goes for any sport, and they sort of maybe those rules don't apply to me, or I'm better than that. And for this group, they have been team first the entire way, and I think that just goes to establish for the next, that there are going to be more number one classes. There are going to be, and some of them are already on campus, but there will be, a number one recruit to come in. And if you're joining this program, you kind of now, and if you're Dawn Staley, you have built up the credibility to where you can firmly say, hey, we don't care if you're the number one prospect in the country. You still have to operate a certain way within the confines of our program. If you didn't have that credibility built up, or if you were the number one coming in and nobody else around is as good as you, then you maybe get treated a little bit differently. But now, the standard, like the top goal is to win a national championship. That's the best finish the program has ever had. Well, they're now, I guess, 9 games away from what would be setting a new standard, and that would be the greatest standard you can ever set. That can be, it's like a 100-yard, play in football. It can be tied, but it can never be broken. So that is what they're fighting for, and that is the reason why I still believed a late game loss to reset you and all these things. I'm not here for that. I don't buy that. It's not a good thing, because you're chasing true greatness, which is an unbeaten season.
Their quest for perfection will continue on Friday, tip off at noon, as they await the winner of the second round game between Arkansas and Missouri. That game going to be at Thursday at noon. So South Carolina benefiting from that double bye, and we'll certainly talk about it more as the week goes along. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. For Wes and Chris, I'm Tyler. Halftime show with Jay and Terry coming up next. 107.5 The Game.